Hi there, I'm Jim.
And I'm Claire.
Let's talk teaching. Welcome to Let's Talk Teaching, a podcast from the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology here at Illinois State University. I'm Jim G. Joining me once again today, I'm excited, it's our director, Dr. Claire Lamonica. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Jim.
We are going to be talking today about our top five, actually your top five picks.
Claire's top five picks.
For what?
For starting off the semester.
Our Pokey Little podcast began with a sort of trilogy of episodes, one talking about having the successful first day of class, and then a real belter of a two-parter on constructing your syllabus. And I think they hold up pretty well.
Yeah.
So we will link to those in the show notes for today's show. And a lot of the concepts that we're going to be probably touching on today, we've actually covered in more depth in some previous episodes.
Right.
So
this is going to be kind of a quick and easy, down and dirty something. 5 things you can do to get the semester off to a great start.
Exactly. Just sort of a reminder, these are probably things you've already done at one point or another, or you've at least thought maybe you might want to do. So let's start with number 1.
Okay. So number 1 is polish up your syllabi.
Okay.
So I think the main thing to think about here is to look at your syllabi and look at them as if you were a student.
Mm-hmm.
What's the message that these documents are going to send to the students in your class? And it's not as easy as it sounds, because syllabi in the academy tend to have sort of a dual role.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is curricular and the other one is pedagogical. So, the curricular piece is, we have to make sure that we have all the T's dotted and it matches up with our curriculum maps and everything. And this is going to get our course approved.
I was just about to say, you've talked before about how we actually end up writing our syllabus sometimes for 2 different audiences.
Right. There's
the audience that we want it to end up with, being the students, but a lot of times it's first written for our peers who are going to be approving this as part of a curriculum committee or something.
And that doesn't necessarily work for students.
Right.
So
Yeah.
You really want to look at it, and to the extent that you are able, make sure that it's a student-friendly document.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add to that would be, and I don't always do this all the time, but sometimes I will have a copy of my syllabus, or I'll take notes about how the class is going. So if I'm dusting off or polishing up, I think is the better way
So you
to
might
put
have
it.
to update it probably.
Yeah, and don't, use that as an opportunity to reflect on how the last semester went.
Right.
And you may want to, that may help you figure out what needs to be buffed and polished a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's number 1.
Number 2?
Number 2 is set up and publish your ReggieNet courses.
Now, we know that a lot of faculty members on campus do that.
Yep.
When they do that, though, I think is more of an open question.
Yes. I'm not sure when we do our census of published courses, but I think it's probably around 10th day of class.
I think so, too.
And we know that as of 10th day of class, the vast majority of courses have been published in ReggieNet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean that they're all published including the same amount of material or using the same tools, and we wouldn't necessarily want to standardize that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say challenge yourself each semester to learn about a new tool and then think deeply about what that tool could add to your class.
Mm-hmm.
How can this make you a more effective teacher?
Right.
And if it can't, ditch it.
Right.
But, there's a lot of tools in there, and I think sometimes people aren't aware of the tools that are there. Mm-hmm. And so I'll hear people saying, well, I have my students do blogs, and they use Blogspot or whatever the current sort of blogging software is. Well, there's a blog tool in ReggieNet, and while it doesn't make a public blog, and so if your goal is for students to produce a public blog, then yes, you probably need to go to Blogspot or something like that. But I would think carefully about that and, sort of the ramifications. So they can keep a blog, or I usually, when I use that tool, I have them set that up so that it's private just between me and the student, and I have them use that for purposes of journaling. Mm-hmm. So you can, we don't want anybody to just go in and try to use all the tools.
Right.
You
And
know?
very few people do.
And very few people
we have
do.
survey information that shows that there's a certain core of popular tools.
Yeah.
But there are also a couple tools like the test and quizzes tool. So people may not be giving assessments like that using ReggieNet. They may be still doing
Right.
it in class, which is perfectly valid. But that and the forums tool are the ones that they say that they think they may use next semester.
Yeah.
And we see that message consistently. So it's the
Yeah.
ones that they think that maybe they should be using.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
and
yeah.
now we have a new rubrics tool. So
Right.
it's not perfect,
Mhm.
but it's nice. And well, I shouldn't say that because you know what? I haven't seen it yet. But
Right.
but I'm just so excited that it's there
Mhm.
because I use rubrics for my assessments. So I'm looking forward to exploring that tool myself. That's going to be my challenge to myself this semester.
Well, and we've talked in a previous episode with our colleague Charles about that rubrics tool. So I would think your initial gut reaction that it's right, or that it's nice, I should say, is spot on. I think it has a lot of utility to it. I think one of the things that we can really, when we're talking about adopting a new tool for the semester, the other thing though is you don't have to go all in on the new tool. You can use the rubric for 1 or 2 or 3 big assignments this semester, and then do your rubrics how you normally did otherwise.
Get a feel for it.
Your students will understand that. Same thing with the tests and quizzes. You don't have to do all of your quizzes in the same place.
Right.
I mean, there is something to be said about consistency. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But as long as you're communicating ahead of time to your students how they do
What
things,
to expect.
what they should expect, and what your expectations are, as we can link to that episode too. I think that's the
a
thing.
long list of linked episodes here.
So the one other thing I would say from what I have seen, and of course, most of what I'm gathering that's not done in the official kind of surveys we put out is much more apocryphal. So I keep an eye on Twitter and stuff like that and other social media channels. And I was even talking to a faculty member in a workshop I was facilitating this week. She has a child attending ISU.
Oh.
And taking an online class this summer, and she kind of shook her head and she said, it's not really my place to say, but for one of my child's classes, that ReggieNet course wasn't made available until the day the course started. And I see this all the time as well on Twitter, right around before classes start. I'm still waiting for them to publish the course.
Yeah.
So we may not realize this, to be fair.
Raise the bar on expectations.
We
Students
really
are expecting to see the stuff before the semester starts.
And I don't know if we're the ones who actually did that here at CTLT, but
No,
I
not
think,
us.
Yeah, it's not our fault.
We as faculty. Yeah.
Well, but and also, I think that's just the world they live in, that digital world they live in. So I think there's actually an advantage. We've talked before about communicating with our students before the first day of class.
Yes, definitely.
But also having that ReggieNet course site available, even if everything's not on there. Just explain to them that it's still, I'll be adding the syllabus later this week, or whatever it is. I think having that presence online actually is reassuring to a student as they're kind of working through getting into that mental space to start the semester.
They just like to know that there's something there, that you're going to use ReggieNet. And I never publish my complete courses. I mean, I always, my modules I release one at a time.
Right. So when you publish, they don't
my
see
lessons,
everything to
they
begin
don't
with.
see
Everything
that's there, and it's not always there, of course.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
True confessions. But,
well, and so we're giving all of this advice in the recognition that also the people who are listening to this are very busy people.
right. So we should move on.
We should. Yeah. Let's do that. Okay.
So we should move on to number 3.
All right.
So number 3 is plan your first day of class.
Now,
And remember, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it again, even though I've said it in many times in other podcasts. There is no such thing as syllabus day. So I want to talk a little bit about norms. Okay, so because I've just been doing some reading, and I've been reading a book about classroom discussion, and it was written by a sociologist, which is really interesting because he, of course, experiences his teaching through a sociological lens, right?
Mhm.
And so he talks a good deal about one of the things that makes it difficult to get authentic discussions or conversations going in classrooms is that we have these established norms. There are things that students and faculty expect that a college classroom will look like. And generally, the sort of most normal norm, the most widespread norm is the professor's going to talk and the students are going to pretend to pay attention. And so, and you know, and he talks,
Yeah.
he doesn't call it pretending to pay attention, but he talks about the notion of civil attention, which is students put aside their distractions. They make fleeting but frequent eye contact with the instructor. They nod. They keep something in front of them that appears as if they're taking notes, and maybe they are.
Right.
But that's what they feel is expected of them. And so the professor may have different expectations of them. So I would say that if you are expecting that your class will be anything besides that, if you are going to disrupt those norms in any way, if you are planning to have student discussions on a regular basis, if you are planning to have students conducting experiments on a regular basis, whatever, disrupt that norm the first day, because the thing you do, and this is the sociologist talking, not just Claire, but the thing that you do on the first day will either reinforce or disrupt the norm, and that's what they're going to expect for the rest of the semester. So you just make it harder on yourself if you go in the first day and read in the syllabus and then come back the second day and say, we're going to have a group discussion. Yay.
So if I
because they won't believe you.
Right. So so let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. If our goal should be to defy expectations that first day with these students to an extent.
Yeah.
Because if we wait until in other words, the old shampoo commercial is true in this case. You never have a second chance to make a first impression, you know?
Yeah.
If you don't defy those expectations and model the behavior right away of what you want the learning to be, it's going to be harder to do to
You're just
defy
making
them
it
on the
hard
second.
on yourself.
It's
It doesn't mean you can never establish a
Right.
different norm, but
Right.
it means that it's going to take longer and it's going to be harder. So if you come in the first day and get them doing the kind of thing, you know, my old saying has always been, you know, start as you intend to continue.
Yeah.
So whatever expectations you have for them in a general way, you should be setting up on the first day.
You know, I was thinking about something along these lines last night, which is we've talked before about some people get really nervous when the teacher, the instructor, some people get really nervous, some people are not. And we also talk about, you know, both of us got into teaching originally because we kind of like to be the one in front of the room, right?
Yeah.
And I know, but there's this idea that we're trying to read the room. We want to walk out of that first class bouncing, right?
Right.
And I think one way to get a good read on those students and see what unique individuals they are, and to not come away feeling like, they were just a bunch of mannequins sitting there, is to do something like you're talking about and to defy the expectation of, like you said, you're up there sonorously reading your syllabus and they are pretending to pay attention.
Right. And it doesn't mean there's no way to go. You know, you could build some student discussions, conversations around the syllabus.
Yeah.
That, you know, there are people who do that very successfully. So, you know, I'm not saying that you have to abandon you're going over your syllabus, even though I may have said that in the past. But I think
I have a recording of it actually. Yes.
It's probably recorded somewhere. It's in sound bites.
Yeah.
But I think you do want to think carefully about the norms that you're establishing on your first day.
And I also think that it would be great if you could do something that is germane to the course, to the content of the course.
Yeah.
Because I also know, you know, when I've taught a one night a week class and it's been later in the week, and the students can smell when the icebreakers are coming, and they're like, we've done this 4 times. So, you know, 4 times already this week.
I have introduced the person next to me 4 times this week.
Right.
Yeah. But
so
not that that's a bad thing, but well, I mean, it's not bad the first time it happens, but they may be looking for something different by Thursday.
Mix it up a little bit, I guess, would be the corollary to this. It will probably do you some good too. Yeah.
So anyway, that was number 3.
Yeah. So number 4.
So number 4 is visit your classrooms. Find out what classrooms you've been assigned to. You may be familiar with them, and that's fine. I will tell you that some classrooms have been magically updated over the summer.
This is true.
It's very exciting. And I wish I knew the names and the numbers and the building names of those classrooms, but I don't. But, you know, it doesn't hurt to just visit your classroom. make sure that things are in working order, make sure that there aren't broken chairs still, sort of sitting there waiting for a student, just kind of take the temperature of the room. Is it a good fit for how you're going to teach? A couple of years ago when I was teaching a freshman class that had, I think, 25 students in it, 27, something like that. I went to visit the classroom, and it was this ginormous classroom with chairs for like 50 or 60 students. And I was like, okay. So I was really glad I knew that in advance, because I got there early the first day and physically roped off some of those chairs and made them unavailable to the students. I was like, except for the one who tried to climb over my rope. But I just, I told him, get out of there. Get out of there. Yeah. Nice try.
Yeah.
So anyway, make sure that the classroom's a good fit for what you're planning to do. I would also suggest, this is a suggestion that makes me kind of sad, but I think nowadays it probably behooves us to take a look at the emergency plan that's posted in the classroom door, and to know where the exits are, to know where you're supposed to go in case of a tornado. What does your classroom have multiple exits? Does your classroom have glass in the doors? Does your classroom lock? Do the doors lock? What if there is an active shooter situation? What's your plan for your students in that classroom?
It brings the mood down.
It does,
but it's necessary, and it doesn't have to be overly dramatic.
No,
when you
and
talk
it's
about
information that you want to have, and the point at which you share that with the students, that doesn't have to happen the first day.
No, I typically don't do it the first day. I mean,
it is kind of a
well, I do it the first week. So if I'm teaching a 3-hour class on one night for the week, I might actually do it that first day, and I will literally start by saying, "All right, I'm going to bring the mood down a little bit."
Yeah.
When I started teaching in a classroom that had these big, beautiful glass doors and all that other stuff, on a second floor and no back exit, I said, well, we have some decisions to make and whatnot. In the classroom I'm going to be teaching in for the fall of 2019, we have windows. We're on the first floor. We have windows. So, it actually, I have to think about how much, and the doors now lock over there in Fell Hall. So
it's not, I think in a way, I mean, it may sort of bring the mood down, but I think also it sends a message to students that you are considering their safety.
Yes.
And and I think they appreciate that, because these students have all spent the majority of their school years in a world where school shootings happen.
I was going to say that kind of thing happens. Yeah.
So they I think will be reassured to know that you've considered it and that you have a plan.
Right.
So that's and you're willing to share that with them.
So the only other thing I would add, and I don't think this is going to raise the mood a little bit, but one thing I found it very helpful to do is to go to the classroom and log into the instructor's computer.
Oh, good thought.
Because especially we have Windows. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. There are some classrooms that have Macs as well, but certainly on the Windows PCs nowadays, when you first log in after a while, after there's been a significant update, it kind of does this thing where it starts talking.
We're updating your personal desktop. This will take a few minutes.
Yeah, you may want to go get a cup of coffee, and that way you're not standing there trying to wasting class time, feeling like you're dying up there waiting for the technology to catch up. So I tend to do that. And you may want to also take a look at, don't forget, if you're using classroom clickers, you have to request every semester to make sure that the clickers software and hardware is properly installed in that classroom. Okay. So you can go to our website, ctlt.illinoisstate.edu, and we will have a link on our technology support page for clickers that will send you to the other website on campus, and it'll be kind of a seamless experience to get there to where you can fill out that request. So. Yeah.
And if you have if you're teaching in a large classroom and there's a sound system, I would test that out.
Oh yeah.
Because you want to make sure that it's working and you know how to get the most out of it.
And you know what? If you're teaching in a classroom, whether it's large or small, but it has a sound system and there's a microphone for the instructor, I would encourage you to actually use it. Students do not have to have an accommodation card in order to get something out of having you mic'd up. I mean, we've talked about this before, and we've started to really for our annual Teaching and Learning Symposium, encourage presenters to use a microphone no matter what,
Yeah.
because
It just makes it easier for people.
especially after I hit 45, it was really.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as
Yeah.
somebody whose ears are aging,
Right.
I have on occasion had to kind of out myself as an emerging senior citizen, and by raising my hand and saying, "Could you use the microphone?"
Yeah.
Even though people are like, "I'm just going to use my teacher voice." So, that's up to you. It's up to you want to think about the size of the classroom, but also think about, that may be something that something else your students will appreciate.
They will appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not showing off when you do that.
No,
I think
no.
you're being respectful of your students.
I
when you
think
do
so
that.
too. And you can explain why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Number
Number 5.
Number 5.
Take us home, Claire.
Yeah, we're gonna, and this really is, take it home. I strongly suggest that between now and the first day of class, you take a day and you just make it, I call it a me day.
Mm-hmm.
You take a me day, and whatever that means to you, but put work out of your mind, go get a massage, go for a hike in a park, whatever it is that will relax you and improve your internal mindset, your mindset, just send you into the semester feeling good.
Yeah.
And feeling rested. And so, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
The semester is going to be 15 weeks long.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, there will be a final evaluation period.
Right.
So,
and then you know what happens after that? Another semester.
that's right. And then
Because
there's
we're really
another
talking about the
semester.
beginning of the academic year now.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, so there's a whole
Yeah.
year ahead of you. And I
Yeah.
would say go into it feeling kind of refreshed
Right.
and strong and comfortable, and
Yeah.
do some yoga, whatever it is.
Do you really do I don't do yoga. Do
People
you,
do. People
do the
people do ohms sometimes. They, we we don't have to go there.
I
but
saw a great Facebook image, a cartoon on Facebook. Somebody sitting in a field in a lotus position going and one cow turns to the other and says, "Dude, that's backwards."
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I think whatever it is, I mean, yoga may not be your thing. Taking a hike in a park is not my thing, but it's a lot of people's thing. And so figure out what your thing is and just spend a day doing it.
Claire, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Find out more about our podcast. Go to our website, ctlt.illinoisstate.edu. You'll not only find a link to the podcast on our homepage, you'll also find a link to ReggieNet support, so you can check out some of those tools that you may want to use, and all sorts of other things that we do. For Dr. Claire Lamonica, and for all my colleagues here at the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology, until we talk again, happy teaching.